Hello, Ken Spriggs here with part 3 of my Ahsoka Tano meets Mando from the episode The Jedi from the Mandalorian TV show. Started painting the rest of Ahsoka, her body and her clothing. Really enjoying doing the painting of it. Glad to finally be getting into the figure after working out the other areas of the vinyl cutting for her tattoos and the lighting and things like that. So I will complete the figure in this video and show you the finished product, other than her hands and the lightsabers, because those will be made together and then glued onto the body, and I have to run the wiring through the body as well. So okay, also I'm trying a few extra or some different filming methods, trying to use my arm extender on my workbench a little more, and getting some close-up video of doing some of the painting and some of the weathering and things like that. So bear with me. I'm good at building models, but I'm not good at doing videos. But I think I've improved over the years in doing them, and I'm trying to make them better so that the quality will be better. So, but bear with me, and let's go ahead and take a look. All right, so I started working on the body from CG Trader, the newest body that I got for Ahsoka Tano. You can see I got the neck sanded down to where it needs to be. After I primered this, I had to go back and do quite a bit of sanding to get it to look this smooth, especially her arms, because there were a lot of print lines that were showing up, and I wanted it to look nice and clean, especially her top chest, because you're going to see a lot of her skin there on her neck and both of her arms. I did the same on the arms. Smoothed out her armor that was showing some print lines. I still have to do the two boots and the pants. You can kind of see right here, there are some pretty obvious print lines right there. So not too bad to clean up. I'm using 400 grit sandpaper, and I'm just going over and sanding down the parts. Now, areas like this where there's a lot of detail, you really can't see any print lines, so that's always pretty good. You can there on that belt. So that one would be tricky to get in there and try to sand. I may just leave most of that alone, kind of give it a leather belt look anyway. But I started working on her pants as well, so okay. But I wanted to mainly get her chest and her two arms done, because they have the orange that I still have here in this cup, and I want to go ahead and get those painted while I still have that orange. I don't want it to dry out. It's lasted for probably 4 or 5 days now, keeping that plastic on top of it and stirring it every day. But I want to go ahead and get those painted. What I'll probably do, I want to kind of look it over, I'll probably paint the orange first, these big areas of her arms and her neck. A little rough there in the back, but you're not going to see it because that's going to be up inside of her head, so I'm not going to worry about it. So I got to do this whole neck, both of these arms and the back parts. It'll probably be easier to paint those first, and then when they dry, mask off just the arms, since this is a sizable sleeve part of clothing. So that's probably what I'll do, and then I'll just paint the brown after that. I might just go ahead and spritz in the orange into these little triangles, because that's supposed to be your skin. And then what I might do is take a picture and make a tiny little mask, since it's just so small. And I only want it to be on the very inside. I don't want it to be on the edges, since that's supposed to be like the clothing over top of her skin, the armband. So, okay. All right, I got an initial coat of paint onto the arms and the body, which I masked, and I did use some little diamond-shaped vinyl masks that I printed out real quick on the little inserts on the sleeves, which is pretty easy to do. And I know I've been saying brown, and I was looking at brown on the previous original figure that I was using, but I went back and I took a bunch of screenshots from the show, and I showed those here right before this video. And she does not have a brown outfit. It's like a dark gray with some various shades. And so I'm trying to replicate that and come up with some different tones. So the initial color that I put on is, find it here, Tamiya dark gray. And I'm letting that dry right now. Now the this inserted part in her chest and that little triangle right there, these seem to be a little bit of a lighter shade of gray, so I'm gonna what I'm probably gonna do is mask those off and leave those this gray. And then I'm thinking of doing something a little slightly darker. I have a couple things I want to look at. All right, so I'm considering a couple of things. I have NATO black, which is a darker, it's more of a dark gray. And I have some dark iron, which I really like. Now it is slightly metallic, but it is a flat color. I also kind of looked at rubber black, but I probably won't go that route on it. So I did tape off those two areas that I mentioned. So what I think I'll do is go ahead and put like a light misting of the dark iron. I want to try that out and see how that looks, because I like how that looks. And I think it will kind of complement the color of her outfit. So, okay. All right, so I put on some of the dark iron, and it is a little too metallic, a little too shiny. I also painted the sleeves. So what I'm going to do is, it's pretty well dried at this point, set up. So while I still have my airbrush out, I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of NATO black over top of it, which is kind of a similar shade of dark color. But they look very much alike, except that obviously it's not the metallic. So, all right, let me go ahead and mist some of that over there, and then hopefully that's going to look more like I want it to be. All right, there we go. So pretty cool. It's kind of tricky to hold those arms in position so they're not exactly where they need to be. But they're going to look pretty cool. And I do like the contrast as well with the gray and her orange skin. So that's going to be pretty cool. Sorry. All right. All right, so I did put on the NATO black, and I liked that a lot better. It came out much nicer. What I also did was I took some Tamiya weathering powders, and I put them over top of the colors there. Let me get that for you here. I initially used this green here because I wanted to try to get a slight greenish tone to go with the diorama I'm going to do, but you really couldn't see it, so I went ahead with some light gray, and I put that over her whole outfit, and also the arm bands, the gray part, which gives it a more realistic look. It takes down some of the satin shine. I may do some more as well. I may do some oils possibly. We'll see. But it's definitely closer to what I want it to be. A few little spots there. I'll have to clean that up. Okay. But I like how that's looking. It gives it enough of a tone difference in the grays. Now I have noticed in her outfit, I don't know if the colors are necessarily different, but they are different materials. So this inserted part underneath her vest is a different kind of material, and you can tell by the pattern in the material. The same with the vest, but there isn't any pattern in this figure, in this 3D print. So what I'm trying to achieve is to give a look of a difference of material, but to do it with the colors instead. I also painted her armor and weathered it on her armbands. I still have to paint the little straps holding them on, probably just a darker gray. But for these, I initially just painted them with gray metallic from Tamiya. Get that for you here. Metallic gray. I tried to dry brush on a little bit of chrome silver or aluminum, and it wasn't really showing up well. So I got out my Alclad paints. I have several of them. Pale burnt metal. I have some polished aluminum. Let's see, some jet exhaust, magnesium, and gunmetal. So I didn't obviously airbrush them on. I just dipped a brush in a paintbrush and just put them on and kind of streaked them, put some scratches in it, that kind of thing, made it look damaged because they're kind of chewed up and well worn. All right, like I said, I still can do some more on these and add on additional things like a wash, that kind of thing. So we'll see. All right, so those are looking pretty cool so far. And then what I also did is I sanded, you can see on the sandpaper, and I got this at a dollar store. It's just for nails. It's a soft, more flexible sponge. I wish it was a little more flexible, and I wish the grit was a little stronger. It's made for sanding your nails, but it worked a little bit, and I used it on these parts, especially the pants, because there's a lot of wrinkles and things like that. It did remove some of the lines, a good part of them, but it mostly was just polishing them. So I still had to go back with some sandpaper and remove the rest. A lot of print lines showing, and also on these boots. And then once I got it where I wanted it to be, and I put some primer on it, some fine scale Tamiya gray fine surface primer, let that dry. I then went ahead and airbrushed it with some rubber black. And again, using the same kind of idea, that these are all some really dark grays. They're not really black, but they're more of a darkish gray. I want to give a little different color to that. And then these panels that are on her waist, I'm going to paint a slightly lighter shade as well. And from what I can tell from the show, the backs of her boots are a darker color, sort of like the rest of her outfit, so I painted those the rubber black. And you can see that this plating is just belted onto her boot. So the actual plating, the front of it, those pieces riveted down over her foot, I'm going to paint with the same metallic gray and weathering and that sort of thing I did with the Alclads on her armbands to make those match. But I'm going to keep the back of the boots darker and weather those like I did her chest. So, okay, coming along very nicely though. All right, so I did a little bit more painting on the parts. This one just has the rubber black on it, as I explained earlier. And the back of the boots here have rubber black as well. Now I took some dark gray and I painted the bands to give them a little bit different color. And I took a little bit of my Alclad's polished aluminum right there. And I just dabbed it onto the little teeny metal rings that are holding them on to the front plate. Just a little bit. I didn't want them to be too obvious. And then I masked this off, of course, and I painted the metallic gray over top of the plating on the front. On the rubber black and the gray, I'm using these weathering powders. And I'm using the gray right here. So let me go ahead and show you those real quick, just to kind of give you an idea of a difference that it makes. So I'll just kind of do a little bit on this one here. So it comes with a little applicator, which looks a lot like a makeup applicator. And it has a brush and it has the little foam pad. The foam pad, you can rub it on pretty solid and get a nice solid color. The brush, you can brush it on and just do like an overall dusting kind of a thing. And that's generally what I want to do. So you just kind of move it along and you get some of the powder on it. And the purpose of this is that, as you can see, this is all uniform. And pants and clothing and material aren't going to look like that. They're not going to have one solid color throughout. So what this does is you brush it on and it kind of gets in the different spots. It mostly stays on the surface creases where you're going to have a lot of that anyway, as far as wear and tear and things like that. The parts that stick out on your clothing, like the seams and the wrinkles, they're going to get worn the fastest, and they're going to be affected the most over time. Okay, so there we go. And it also wanted to lighten it up a bit because it's fairly dark, and even though her clothing is a dark gray, it's not really this dark. All right, let's do some of that over here. As you can see, it gives it an uneven tone as well, so it breaks up the solid color that's on there. It also brings down some of the glossiness or the shine that you would get, even though these are flat. This is a flat paint. It does have a bit of a satiny look to it, and I didn't really want it to look like that. It doesn't look realistic. So you can see that looks a whole lot better right off the bat. All right, so I'll continue to work on that, but let me show you on these. So again, an even consistency of the dark rubber black. So we go ahead and we get on some gray. I don't know if you can see it here, but even here where there are like wrinkles in the boots, you can see how it highlights the top of it as opposed to the rest. And it shows that there's actual wrinkles in there. So that's kind of cool. And the same with right here. Then the fact that, you know, it makes the boot look more dusty, which it would be because she's living in the woods, walking through charred woods and things like that. There we go. And that definitely added to that. Hopefully you can see that in this light. But that boot, it brought out a lot of the detail that's in there for that as well. The tip of the toes in it. Okay. All right, and just overall makes a more realistic look, as you can see between the two. It's a subtle difference, but certainly it adds to a realistic looking figure as opposed to the clear, the solid one color paint that you're going to get just by airbrushing it. All right, but I really like the weathering powders on things like this. Now, if this had a pattern in it, sort of like this has a pattern right here. If this had a deep pattern, I would probably consider doing some oils in it first to give it a little more randomness, and then do the powder over top. But because it's all smooth, the powders really work well in order to make that look realistic. All right. All right, so I'm going to show you how I use some of these Alclad metallics to give some different highlight, metal finishes on these boots. Now, normally speaking, the Alclads are typically used to give it a nice shiny metallic look. So you would paint a gloss black over something, and then you would airbrush this on, and it would give it an even metallic look. But for this situation, I want to have a chewed up metal look. And then first of all, let me apologize. I'm trying a new technique where I have my camera up on an extended arm, and I've used it before, but I'm playing with it a little bit and trying to position a little bit better so it's straight up and down. So I have to be careful that if I lift something up, I take it straight up and not like up this way and take it out of frame. So some of the shots I was doing in the last clip were out of frame a little bit. So I'm going to try to keep these ones in. So what I did so far is I took a toothpick and I just put a few scratches, some deliberate scratches onto the metal. And then so they wouldn't look so obvious, I took this emery board and I just kind of scuffed it and just scuffed along some of it just lightly. I didn't want to take off too much paint, but I definitely wanted her boots, the metal, especially in her shins, to be all scraped up because she would be taking hits to those, obviously, and that's where they would get damaged the most. And then that way as well, once I just let it a little bit, once I put on the metallics, they're going to kind of fill in some of those scratches as well. So the three that I'm going to be working with are going to be the jet exhaust, which is a darker, the polished aluminum, which is obviously shiny and silvery, and then this pale burnt metal, which I really like, is really cool. You really got to shake these up, get all the pigment to mix up in it, and then you have to use their thinner. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me start with some pale burnt metal. And obviously I'm just doing this randomly because there's no set pattern that I'm painting. I'm simply going to be putting it on in a patchy way, which is what I want anyway. I want it to be patchy, but not like real heavy. Okay. Just to kind of give it that look that it's been damaged and beat up and it's dirty. Okay, so that's good on that. And this goes on really thin and it dries pretty quickly because it's a very thin lacquer. And like I said, it's designed generally to be airbrushed on, so it doesn't really go on shiny or the way it's supposed to when you just brush it on. But that's what I want. Okay, here we go. All right, so I'm done with that one. And I can go back and do more. I'm just kind of doing a little bit here and there. All right, so let's go ahead and do the polished aluminum. You can kind of see how the shiniest, the metallics or the pigments stick to the bottom. You got to really get it mixed in. All right. All right, so this is the shinier aspect of it. I gotta make sure I get these two. Okay. All right, so this one I want to kind of dab it on the edges like they're worn. This one doesn't show up quite as well because it's obviously silver. And it's, oh, I got a little bit on there. That's all right. You got to be careful because when you get it on this other part, I'll have to touch that up a bit. Okay. And it's kind of hard to see. If you can see, there's like different metallics showing up. And a lot of these I'm going to dirty up as well. I'm probably going to do an oil wash on this. Yeah, you got to be careful. These are really thin, so they do tend to kind of stick off and run off a little bit. So you want to be careful because I'm going to have to touch that up a bit. All right. But no big deal. I'm going to dab some of that off. But I definitely want to give the idea that these boots have seen some action. And we don't really know her history up till this point. Well, we know her past history, but we don't know where she's been the last few years, so who knows what she's been up to and what battle she's been in. All right. Okay. So that one's done as well. All right, and the last one. This is the dark one, so this is jet exhaust, so it's really dark. That way it'll give me some contrasting patches and things like that. So okay. Nope, a little too dark. So this one, I want to do a little more of like a dry brushing. There we go. There we go. Just dab it on. This one's really thick and dark, so you don't want to do it too wet. Plus you can kind of give it like some scuffs and things like that. And if you don't like some of it, you can always get some of this thinner, put it on there and thin it out a little bit. But you got to kind of do it quickly because this dries pretty fast, like I said. Sorry if some of this isn't in frame. Okay, and this is kind of cool too because it almost looks like it's dirt and that sort of thing. It's grease. Just to really dirty up that shiny metal. Okay, so definitely looking pretty dirty now. Okay. And sometimes it works good just to kind of dab it on like you're sponging it on, sort of, to make it look patchy. There we go. So that looks like it's a big dirty patch on the side of it. So that's kind of cool. In other places you can do it like a scuff. Okay. So the more that you can make it look uneven, the better. It's kind of the point, is that it's random. Obviously, I'm doing a lot more of this darker because that kind of gives it the dirty look. Almost like a dark wash. Which I may still do. You don't want to overdo it necessarily on the weathering of the oils or the, accents. Just take your time. You can always add more, but a lot of times it's hard to take it back off. Okay, there we go. All right, so that's what I'm going to do for now. That's a good start. Definitely gives them a more, sorry for the light, definitely gives them a more scuffed and dirty look than just having that bare metal. So, okay. All right, so now that I have finished the initial weathering on the armor using the Alclads, I'm going to go ahead and do an oil wash on all of these parts because they're a little too obvious. I want it to just be kind of blended together and not quite so obvious. And I want these to be, pretty well grunged up. So an overall oil wash is going to kind of do that for me. And what I like to use are oils called, from a company called 502 Abteilung. And this particular one is Starship Filth, which is one of my favorites. It's just like a dark black filthy wash, and it goes on. And the nice thing about oils is you can put them on fairly heavily. You can thin them back out again. You can do all kinds of things. It takes quite a while for them to fully dry, so you can work with them quite a bit. In order to thin them out, you use either terpenoid or sort of like turpentine, but I use this. It's called odorless mineral spirits. I get this at Hobby Lobby. It's an off-brand, but this thins out the oils and breaks them down. So what I do, first of all, you just need a little bit of this. And the good thing about the oils is that they are really strong pigments, very, very strong pigment. So even when you thin it down, you let it dry for a good hour or so, you come back to it, it's going to leave the oil behind, but it's going to evaporate off the mineral spirits. So you're just going to see like the streaks and the dirt and the grunge. It's going to get into every little spot that's there too. So, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and take some my odorless mineral spirits and just put that in there. Okay. And I'll kind of keep this here because I might need it again here. Also have my paper towels ready to go. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start with this one here. I'm going to put that in there. And you can put these on at different thicknesses and strengths, and they're still pretty powerful. You can see how dark that is. So on these ones, you don't have to be afraid to put these on as a really dark wash because, like I said, you can take it back off if you need to. All right, so let me go ahead You can already see that's pretty cool. That's grunging up the metal. And some of that gets on the gray. It's okay. It's not a big deal. Okay. And some of it did get on back there. It's no big deal. All right. So I'm just going to let that sit here for a few minutes. Go ahead and do the other ones. Maybe not quite so heavy. All right. And if it doesn't look dark enough, you put a little bit more of the oils in it. And if it's too dark, you thin it out some more. So they're very versatile. And while it's still in this state, you can just wipe it all back off if you wanted to. Now, because these are on smooth surfaces, they're not going to get into any little crevices except maybe down here in these little grooves right here. But I want to let that start to set up and dry on there, and then we'll come back to it. All right, so we'll go ahead and get the arms. Okay. And it's really hard to tell just how the oils are affecting it until you let them dry for a few hours and then you come back to it. And just kind of let it do its thing. Put a couple of dark spots. And I know right now they look kind of extreme, but it's okay. It'll come together in the end. The main thing is that it's going to make them look dirty and greasy and have like a film on them, so it's going to really take down that metallic shine. And I have paper towel down, obviously, to kind of keep that from getting everywhere. All right, let me just thin these out just a little bit. Okay. All right. So there's not much to it. Like I said, you want it to go on fairly thick, and then once it starts to set up and the odorless thinner evaporates, you can kind of already see it starting on here. It'll just leave the film behind. And then what I can do is come back and I can work the oils with the brush and kind of get them to be the way I want it to look. So, okay. So I'm going to let those sit. Let that dry here for a few hours, and then I'll come back to it. And then we'll go ahead and take a look at how that kind of settles in, and then we'll do the next step of it. All right. All right, so I've let these sit for a few hours, and as you can see, the very obvious film has kind of settled down and dried. Now they just look kind of dirty and greasy. As far as these boots are concerned, I really like those. I hope those are in frame. I'll let them sit overnight, and believe it or not, tomorrow I could still put some of the odorless thinner on a brush and brush it around, and it would still move these oils around. But I like how random they look, and it really brought that shine down quite a bit. And then on the arms, same thing, even filthier. But again, you can see how it kind of evened out. So the oils remained, the pigment remained behind, and you can see how there's kind of some edges showing on it. Some parts are darker and thicker than others, so that's pretty cool. So I kind of like those as they are for right now. So I'm going to leave them as they are, and then tomorrow I'll go ahead and look at them and see if I need to thin them out at all. A little bit got on to the gray, but it just looks like it's a little bit dirty. So actually, if I wanted to, I could do that on these, and it would look a little more natural as well. And I may just do that. We'll see. Just let this dry, and then we'll come back and take a look at it. I really don't want to do these on the whole figure, because then I don't want her to look too filthy looking. So, but all right, but these looking good. So that's pretty much how I use the oils to do some weathering and really muck up the armor for her. All right. All right, so a lot more painting on the trousers or the pants, the jumpsuit. I don't think Ahsoka wears a jumper. That doesn't sound right. She's too tough for that. But a lot of masking on this piece because I wanted to have the different colors, but all still the main gray part of it, because it really is just all dark gray, but I wanted to give this figure some character, and there's not, other than some of these pieces like these ones and the belt and these two side pieces, there really isn't any pattern. So I wanted to give it a different look. So I got the front and the back pieces, which I decided to go with the dark gray to match the basically her top underneath her vest, and also that little piece at the top on the front and back. On the sides, I painted with, first of all, the NATO black. But NATO black and the rubber black are so close in tone that it really didn't look that different. So I went over it with some dark iron, and that gave it kind of that metallic look. And then I dusted it down with some Tamiya weathering powders. I still have to finish up those two little pieces. I did paint the two top parts that are a continuation of this whole piece, and I have to do some dusting of that too. And then I just painted some dark brown on the belt, the main part of the belt, and I need to go back now and do some metallic on this ring. And I'll take a look at these little straps. I believe these straps are dark, so I'm probably going to go with something maybe even black, but a dark color as well on all these strings. And then these tassels, there are some metallic elements, like some metallic beads, so I'll play with that as well. Maybe even some color. It's really hard to see a lot of it, so I'm going to have a little bit of leeway to play with, but I just wanted to add a little bit of extra accents into it to give it some more color. I also want to paint these two hooks some kind of a metallic, because they would be pieces of metal that would be attached to her belt that she hangs her lightsabers from. So, okay. All right, and here is her finished pants with the accents on it. I used the Alclad polished aluminum to do her belt buckle, her two little hooks on the sides for her lightsabers. I painted black over the straps around her belt, and these little tassels, I'm not sure what those are supposed to be, but I use the polished aluminum to do the accents on that as well. All right, so looking pretty fantastic. I like those color combinations on her. Okay, so let me go ahead and put the figure together. I'm not going to glue it together, but let me put all the parts together and show you how she's going to look. All right, and there is my pretty much finished Ahsoka. Obviously, she doesn't have any hands because they're going to have the lightsabers that I still have to work on. So I'm going to use the hands and the lightsaber hilts from the first figure. Once I get them wired in, I have them hollowed out for wiring for the lightsabers, which I'll be working on next time. But there's the rest of her body. Well, she's not glued together, obviously, so I still have to do a little bit of touching up around the waist, that sort of thing. But the main painting is all done. I think she's looking pretty fantastic. All right. And there is a back shot of her, so you can see the back of her boots, the armor on her arms. And her arms aren't fitted up all the way. I just stuck a little bit of tape on there to keep those up inside of there. Obviously, her skin on the back, which is very prominent. So, all right, looking very, very cool. All right, so that's going to wrap up the video for this week. Really happy with how Ahsoka has turned out. I think she's going to look fantastic on my display. So I will continue working on her lightsabers and getting those honed in, and hopefully get those completed in the next video, as well as beginning work on Mando, the Mandalorian, and getting him painted as well, and starting working on some ideas for the diorama for the both of them. So, all right, thanks again to all my new subscribers. I just recently went over 1,500 subscribers, so thank you very much. Keep watching, and I will be posting a lot more. Thank you.